Can you see the screen, Reba, that I'm sharing? Is the screen visible to you? Hello? Hello? Am I audible and visible to you, Reba?
Yes, sir.
So others have said that they will join, but because it's already time, so let's just begin with the recap of yesterday. So basically, yesterday we started with the chemical messengers in the endocrine system, and I told you that we will be talking about all those glands which are ductless and secrete hormones, right?
Yes, sir.
Those which are called exocrine glands, right? So we are done with hypothalamus.
Written up to LH in pituitary gland.
Sorry, what? Excuse me. What are you saying, Reba?
Doing pituitary gland, sir.
Yes, we are on pituitary gland, and I've started with anterior pituitary hormones, right? Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what we have done prolactin, FSH, and LH, and
Yes.
also GH. Okay. Growth hormone, prolactin, FSH, LH. Okay. So there are two more hormones from the anterior pituitary. So since we have done LH, the fifth one, just keep writing this. So the fifth one, it's called thyroid stimulating hormone, right? TSH.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday I told you that TSH is regulated from hypothalamus by thyrotropin releasing hormone, right?
Yes, sir.
That is called TRH. So TRH regulates TSH. Now, thyroid stimulating hormones is released from anterior pituitary, and it goes to the thyroid gland, which is another gland that we'll be studying, and it asks them to release what?
T3 and T4.
T3 and T4. Now this T3 and T4 are thyroid hormones, and we'll study about them later. So TSH has just one role. It has got just one role, okay? But to remember that TRH, which was controlling or regulating TSH from hypothalamus, that had two roles. Also to increase the secretion of TSH as well as prolactin. Remember?
Yes, sir.
Whereas for inhibiting prolactin, we had another hormone which was called prolactin inhibitory hormone, PIH.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So remember this. And the last one, which is from the anterior pituitary and is important, is called adrenocorticotropic hormone. Just write it. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Now it's also called ACTH. This is the acronym for it. So ACTH, as the word says, it affects adrenal gland. Remember I told you yesterday, we have a pair of endocrine glands sitting at the top of each kidney.
Yes, sir.
There is one on the top of every kidney. So there is one pair, and that is called adrenal gland. So just write down that adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. It is also sometimes, I think in NCERT also, it's referred to as corticotropin. So corticotropin is another name for ACTH, short name. So adrenocorticotropic hormone or corticotropin is the same thing. Okay, and just write down it. It's actually, how should you write it down? Write down. It is released. It is released in response. It is released in response to the in response to the corticotropin releasing hormone. So this I didn't tell you. Did I tell you about CRH in hypothalamus? Let me just go at hypothalamus.
No, sir.
No, I did not tell you about CRH, right? So you can just add one more thing here after prolactin, the fifth thing, which is called CRH. Okay, so it's called corticotropin releasing hormone. Now it again belongs to the releasing hormone group, right? Remember there were two, inhibitory
Yes,
and releasing.
Yes, sir.
So this is corticotropin releasing hormone. So as we'll go further, if I'll remember other things, I'll just tell you to add corticotropin releasing hormone. from the hypothalamus. So it is released in response to CRH. When CRH is released from hypothalamus, it goes down to pituitary gland, and then pituitary releases ACTH. And this is a very important for, write down, ACTH. What does this do? ACTH stimulates the synthesis and secretion. The synthesis and secretion of steroid hormones. So in our body, we have, remember when I was telling about lipid soluble, there I told, when I was telling about lipid soluble hormones, water soluble and lipid soluble, just above.
That lipid soluble hormones, steroid hormones. Soluble.
Yes, so here I told you that what are the lipid soluble hormones?
Steroid hormones, and both T3 and T4 are also lipid soluble.
So apart from T3 and T4, steroid hormones are lipid soluble, and these steroid hormones are basically called corticosteroids. Okay, so the collective name of this is corticosteroids, and it is released from the adrenal glands, the cortex of the adrenal gland. So the adrenal gland, which is sitting at the top of kidneys, releases these corticosteroids. And for these corticosteroids to be released, this ACTH has to be released from the pituitary. And for that ACTH to be released, CRH has to be released from hypothalamus. So you do understand there are checkpoints.
Yes,
So
sir.
leads to ACTH, and ACTH further is important, write down. It stimulates the synthesis and secretion of steroid hormones called corticosteroids. So it increases this release from the adrenal cortex. And about the cortex and medulla, I have told you always, whenever we talk about cortex, it is the peripheral part, and medulla is in the center, right? The kidney, the cortex of the kidney and the medulla of the kidney. Similarly, for any cell also, we can say that cortical periphery or in the center. So for adrenal also, there is a cortex, which is called adrenal cortex. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these are all from anterior pituitary. Okay, all these hormones are released from 6 hormones. I think that's all that's been asked from the anterior pituitary. Now write down few hormones from posterior pituitary, which are also important. Now posterior pituitary releases lesser number of hormones as compared to anterior one. Okay, and for the sake of entrances, like I have not seen it in multiple papers, but posterior pituitary also has another name, which is called neurohypophysis. And for anterior pituitary, they use the word adenohypophysis. So for the anterior, they use the word adenohypophysis. Okay, clear? You don't have to remember it for ports or something, but just remember that there is this kind of terminology for some tough questions. That's all. Otherwise, if you just remember anterior and posterior, it's fine. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Joined. Yes, I can see. Okay, Reba, Omar and Aisha joined. Hi, Omar. Hi, Aisha.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. So you joined us now. So we have just finished 2 hormones of the anterior pituitary, and we are now to posterior pituitary. And the most important hormone, which we have also told about, which we have discussed about, is oxytocin. So I've told you about oxytocin already.
Yes, sir.
Just know that it's also known as pitocin. Okay, its another name is pitocin. and just write some functions, just write down bullet points. It helps in uterine contractions, as I've already told you. Uterine contractions. So it helps the female during the childbirth. And it also helps in release of milk along with prolactin. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So prolactin basically is important for promoting the lactation, like starting the formation of milk inside the mammary glands. And for the release, because whatever you are releasing, you have to contract and relax muscles, right? For that. So oxytocin helps there. Oxytocin helps female during and after the childbirth. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
And write down. That's why oxytocin is commonly in NCERT also. It's referred to as birth hormone. This is just a nickname given to it because it's very active during the birth, childbirth. So it's called the birth hormone or labor hormone. You know, labor? Labor is another word used for delivery. Yeah. So it's called birth hormone. And because of this, but oxytocin is actually also present in males and unpregnant females. So what is it doing there? Why it's called birth hormone still? Because we do not know exactly, like there's a lot of research still going on to exactly figure out the constituent function of oxytocin in males and unpregnant females. Is it clear? So this is the best we know about it. So it's called the birth hormone. And the second, we talked about the second one during the excretory system part, which is called vasopressin. Remember I told you? Vasopressin. No one remember what vasopressin? Okay, so write down vasopressin. It you must be knowing the other name of it. Do you remember the name ADH? Aisha, Riba? Yes, Riba. What is ADH?
Antidiuretic hormone.
Antidiuretic hormone. And what does this do? We have discussed this already for cardiovascular also and for renal also. So for cardiovascular, I told you it increases the blood pressure by putting water back into the blood, right? So it's active during the dehydrated conditions. Remember this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So just write down vaso or ADH. It increases the reabsorption of water. It increases the reabsorption of water from the renal tubules, basically from the DCT. Remember what is DCT? PCT, DCT, and collecting duct. I think Reba missed that class, right?
Yes, sir.
The excretory system class. Aisha, you were there. Remember proximal convoluted tubule, then loop of Henle, then DCT and collecting duct. So basically it works on DCT. So it removes water from there, write down, from the renal tubules and reduces.
So can you repeat the point?
Yeah. What have you written?
Increases the reabsorption of water from the renal.
Tubules, Tubules. It increases the reabsorption of water from renal tubules. And specifically, if a question comes from where, it will come only in entrances, not in your boards. Then you can say DCT, distal convoluted tubule, and collecting duct, CD, collecting duct of the nephrons. Therefore, reducing the loss of water through urine. So it makes the urine more concentrated and puts the water back into the blood. And when do we need to do that? When do we need to do that? When do we need to take more water from the urine? When we are under what? When we are dehydrated or very much hydrated?
Very
If we are
hydrated.
dehydrated.
Yes. So when we are dehydrated, we need to conserve and preserve and save as much water as we can. So we have to reduce its loss through urine, and hence this vasopressin from the posterior pituitary comes into the blood, goes to the kidney, tells the kidney to reabsorb more and more water from the DCT and the collecting duct before sending it into the urinary bladder. Therefore, the urine gets concentrated and blood gets more water to survive. Is it clear? So that's why it is also called antidiuretic hormone. Okay. And write down. In the absence, in the presence of ADH, when ADH is present. So what do you think? If ADH is being secreted, we will be producing more urine or less urine?
Less urine.
Less urine. So the frequency of urination or micturition will increase or decrease?
Decrease.
Decrease. So write down, in the presence of ADH, urine output decreases many folds. In the presence of ADH in the blood, urine output decreases. Now, there is one thing that as doctors, you all must be seeing as symptoms, okay? So often for a lot of diseases and disorders, the symptom is polyuria. Polyuria is like frequently going to urination, a lot of urination, right? The frequent urination is a symptom. And when you see frequent urination, you can also connect it back to one thing which is called ADH. So ADH is not being released from the pituitary, which means the body starts producing more and more urine. So the person has to go to urinate more often. Is it clear?
Yeah.
And this question has come that this happens under the effect of alcohol. So people who consume alcohol, so we think that, you know, alcohol or like beer or something is just water. So we are drinking lots of water. That's why we are going to urinate more. But that's not true. The truth is that alcohol actually inhibits the secretion of ADH. Is it clear? It's true that if you drink lots of water, of course, the rate of urination will increase, but it will not become very frequent. Okay. So people who consume alcohol most like regularly, their posterior pituitary like does not produce ADH, and then they often get into a problem of frequent urination. Is it clear? So you can just write it down. It's not important for boards, but write down. Alcohol inhibits ADH secretion. Alcohol decreases inhibits ADH secretion, leading to frequent urination. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these are the two important hormones from posterior pituitary. Now from pituitary, let's go down. Let's come to pineal. Second gland, which is in our head region, is the pineal gland. So as I have told you already, this is the third one, right? Yes. Pineal gland. Write down. In some books, pineal gland is also written as epiphysis. Remember adenohypophysis, neurohypophysis?
Yes, sir.
And this is just called epiphysis. So write down, it is a small gland which secretes melatonin. It's a small gland that secretes melatonin. And yesterday we discussed about melatonin, and I told you about those commercial strips that come for melatonin, which helps
Yes,
you
sir.
melatonin. So write down melatonin is, it's also called the hormone of darkness. Melatonin is the hormone of darkness. Okay, so basically melatonin secretion depends on light dark cycle. So the way we have evolved, our earth has a 12-hour, like it's a day and a light cycle, right? So it's a 24-hour cycle where we have day and night. So during the night, as it starts becoming darker, so on a daily rhythm, on a daily basis, you can see that during the day, the melatonin secretion is less. But after evening, as we normally, like for all animals, as darkness comes, the secretion starts increasing. But nowadays, because of the lifestyle we live in, when it is dark outside, it's not dark in our homes, right?
Yes, sir.
So we have delayed the darkness phase for us because there is light in the house till 9, 10, and 11 before we go to sleep. So when we switch off the light and go to sleep, it's very important to sleep in dim lights, because dim lights actually help you or give signal to your brain through your eyes to start secreting melatonin, because the person is now sleeping. Do you understand? So
Yeah.
in the darkness, write down, in the darkness, the melatonin secretion rises up around 10 folds, 10 times. In the darkness, the melatonin secretion increases or rises up. Or if you want to give a number, just it's like approximately around 10 folds. And during the day, it's low. So what is melanin actually doing? It's not directly affecting, like in a way, it's not directly affecting the sleep, but actually telling your body that there is a clock. You all have heard of the natural body clock, also called as circadian rhythm. How many of you have heard of this term? The biological clock or the natural clock or circadian rhythm. Have you heard of this?
No, sir.
Okay, so our body functions through a biological clock. So if anyone has a habit like of waking up at 7:30, let's say for school, when people used to go, like when you go to school, you wake up at 7:30, get ready by 8:30, and by 9 you have to reach the school, right? So 7:30 is the time you have to wake up. So after some time, body adapts to that clock. And sometime you will realize that you even just wake up a minute or two before the alarm is about to go off. Right? Has it happened with you?
Yes, sir.
Nowadays, you see the lifestyle of your parents or grandparents. They did not used to have alarm clocks. They used to wake up, and it happens. If your body is habituated to something, it just, and this alarm biological clock is based on the circadian rhythm, the light dark cycle of the planet. And it's true for all organisms, humans, bacteria, other animals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, everyone. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So no one goes and tells the bird that it's 6:30 and it's about to get dark, so you just come back home. Sometimes it's basically they're just getting cues from the light and the dark. Okay, that's called circadian rhythm or biological clock. Similarly, also a lot of secretions starts happening in the body normally. So this you can understand this through this example, that a lot of studies has been done where certain things start producing during the day and then gets low during the night, and certain things in our body starts producing during the night and gets low during the day. Now if you keep a person in a constant light condition, like you keep a person or an organism, an animal or cell constantly exposed to light, 24-hour light cycle, then you will see that that secretion pattern, it the cell does not forget it all of a sudden. It takes few days for that system to reshift and rechange. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Best example you can see with your feeding habits. Has it happened to you that you have a fixed time of lunch every day, and then someday you got late for lunch and you are like your stomach is churning, you're feeling hungry?
Yes, sir.
You know without seeing a clock, you know that, oh, it must be 2 or 2:30 because I'm very hungry, right?
No.
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 Okay. So it has never happened to you?
No. Like, till now I remember I never did this thing.
Okay, so if you have a disciplined schedule to eat, then someday if you just test it, you can actually test it during the fasts. So every culture has fasts. We keep fasts, right? So
Yes,
during the
sir.
fasts, the first few fasts, like the first few days are the most difficult. The first week is the most difficult, right? And then from
Yes, sir.
second towards, your body starts helping you, because it shifts the schedule. It knows that, okay, from last 7 days there's no food coming after the sunrise and until the sunset. So basically I just have to wait and utilize the reserved energy from the body. But the first day you start your fast, like in the Ramzan, you will not feel that comfortable. Have you, this you must all have experienced. Have you experienced this?
Yes.
This is because you are telling your biological clock to tweak itself. You are resettling that biological clock, and it takes some time. And also, you will also realize that after the fast ends, the first few days you also have difficulty to come back to the schedule. You will not feel hungry at the time of lunch that much. And again, you have to make a habit to start eating during the lunch. Have you, so the counter, have you experienced the counter as well? Or you just get food, so you just eat? You've not thought enough. So you understand what I'm trying to say regarding the
Yes.
body? Okay. So write down, melatonin contributes to the setting of, melatonin contributes to the setting of the body's biological clock. The body's biological clock. And the most common thing we know about melatonin is because it's secreted in more quantity during the night. So it also promotes sleeping. So you can write down, it promotes good sleep during the night. It promotes good sleep during the night. One another thing with melatonin is it's not the same. So for kids and adults, so as we grow old, because of our behavior patterns, our, like the way we work or whatever, like it's not proved what is the exact reason for it, but it's always working well and it's secreted in greater amounts in kids. So kids, so just write down, melatonin secretion levels are higher in kids, or children and even in the night time, the amount of melatonin that children produce, adults do not produce that. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
And it's obvious now, because see, biologically you set your rhythm, like till you are a kid, like you are 13, 14, 15 years of your life, you set your rhythm basically. So biologically the body thinks that, okay, fine, the rhythm is set, this time you wake up, this is the night, this is the day, this time you have to sleep, this time you have to work. So it's for that. And what else it does? So since we know that melatonin as a hormone actually has something to do with light, okay, so this is about human physiology, but I think I got reminded of some important things. Remember, I was telling you about animal kingdom. When I was telling you about animal kingdom, the first form of life that came out of water were amphibians, right? Amphibians, reptiles. So the pineal gland is also present in fish, amphibians, and reptiles. Okay, but in fish and amphibians, this pineal gland is not located very deep inside into the brain. Okay, but it's located near the skin, near their skin outside, and it's associated with the function of detecting light. Is it clear? So you can just write down that the pineal gland in fish and amphibians, I have seen this being asked, the pineal gland in fish and amphibians are located closer to the skin, are located closer to the skin, and helps in detection of light, and helps in detection of light. So this is about fish and amphibians. In birds, there is another different position for it. So write down, in birds, it is located on the brain. Okay, at the top. So in birds, it is located on the brain. And again, it helps in receiving light stimulus. It helps in receiving light stimulus through the skull, through the skull. Okay. And in mammals, I just told you it's in the brain. Okay. So in mammals, like in humans, I told you it's very much inside the brain. It's in the center, somewhere in the center of the brain. So it's clear that it cannot get light stimulus directly, can it?
No, sir.
No, right. So for that, we need something, right? So for that, we need another good sensory organs which connect to the pineal gland or send stimulus to the pineal gland. So that is our eyes. So our eyes send signal to the pineal gland directly through the optic nerve. Okay, so just remember that in higher mammals, since it is very much deep inside, so eyes also act as a stimulus for the pineal gland. But whereas in amphibians, fish, and birds, it can just get it through without eyes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So I think that's all about pineal gland. And let's come to thyroid. We have hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal, yes, thyroid. So as I already told you about thyroid gland, we have studied almost everything about thyroid gland. But just know that it's the largest endocrine gland of the body. Okay. Thyroid gland, because there are two, right? And if you join both the sizes, it's the largest endocrine gland. Which is the largest exocrine gland of the body? Or which is the largest gland in general in the body? Which is the largest organ in the body? Say something. You all know it. An exocrine gland is which secretes through ducts. Remember liver?
Yes, sir. Liver.
What does it secretes? Bile.
Bile.
Through ducts. So it's the largest gland in general or largest exocrine gland, but the largest endocrine gland is thyroid. So this question is asked multiple times. So we see the word gland and everyone remembers while remembering human physiology is that largest gland, liver. So they just see the gland word and there will be liver in the options for sure and you take the liver. But you forget the endocrine part. So the largest endocrine gland is thyroid. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
and it's located on trachea, either side of the trachea. Trachea is the windpipe or the food pipe? Trachea, is
Food
it
pipe.
wind? Which one?
Windpipe.
Food pipe. You're saying food pipe or windpipe?
Windpipe.
Windpipe, yes. So write down, it's located on either side of trachea. And it produces thyroid hormones, which is T3 and T4. And T3 is called triiodothyroxine. So I'll just write it here, T3. So the word 3 means there are 3 iodines. So write down triiodo. There are 2 I's here, okay? Triiodo thyronine. So T3 is called triiodothyronine and T4 is called tetraiodothyronine. Is it clear? The word tri means and the word tetra means
4.
4. So tetraiodothyronine. T4 is also known as thyroxine. So this word is very clear, very common. Doctors also use this word. So your thyroxine levels are low or your thyroxine levels are high. So they're basically talking about T3 and T4. So T3 has 3 atoms of iodine and T4 has 4 atoms of iodine. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Will you just please allow me 2 minutes? I just need to get water, okay?
Yes,
Just wait.
sir.
Hello. Am I audible, everyone? Am I visible?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was telling you that T3 and T4. So T4 is called thyroxine or tetraiodothyronine or triiodothyronine. Now, about this, write down a few things. Apart from thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, the thyroid gland also secretes one more thing, which is called calcitonin. Calcitonin. So these two things the thyroid gland secretes. Okay. What else we should know? Calcitonin. So I just tell you. Write down. Among the thyroid hormones, in bracket write down T3 and T4. The major one is T4. The major one is T4, which is secreted by the gland. Okay. Which then, or don't continue the sentence, stop the sentence and write T4 travels in the blood. T4 travels in the blood in an attached form. In an attached form to a protein. So it's not free. So T4 is attached, okay? And the protein to which it attaches is the same concept, like remember the concept of hemoglobin? It's carrying oxygen and CO2.
Yes, sir.
But it has higher affinity for oxygen. It's not
Yes.
exactly the same mechanism. I'm just telling you to draw parallel. So this story stays in your head. So T4, when it's secreted, it's the major hormone which is secreted from the thyroid glands. And when it secretes, majority of this is attached to the protein in the blood. Okay, you don't need to know the name of the protein, but most of T4 is not free in the blood. It's attached to something. This is what I'm trying to tell you. And there is also T3, which is secreted. It's minor, but it's also there. And the efficiency for that protein. So the protein has greater efficiency for T4 than T3. Just like hemoglobin has greater affinity for oxygen than hemoglobin, than CO2. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Let's write down around or more than 99% of T4, more than 99% of T4 is attached to the protein in the blood plasma. More than 99% of T4 is attached to the blood protein, is attached to the protein in the blood plasma. So you see very less amount of T4 is present, right, in the blood. Is it clear? The amount of T4 which is freely available in the blood is very less, right?
Yes, sir.
And there is also T3 in the blood, because T3 is the more active form. Do you understand? Do you understand? T3 is the more active form because most of the T4 is actually bound to proteins. And then what happens? So there is some T4 which is free in the plasma and some T3, because T3 is already a minor one. So T3 and T4 are also present in the plasma. So when these cells go inside, so when these two hormones go inside any cell where they can function or show effect, T4 gets converted into T3 to be active. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Write down. Once the free T4 passes into the cytoplasm, of target cell. Once the free T4 passes into the cytoplasm of target cell, it is converted into T3 by enzymes. So there are certain enzymes, again, the names are not important, never asked, but through enzymatic activity, T4 is transferred and converted into T3. And just write a star mark, put a star mark here, write down T3 rather than T4 is the active hormone within the cells. So this is asked. The question, it can also come in boards. So the question which will be asked is, which is more active form of thyroid hormone? You have to write T3, okay? Or you
Yes,
have to T3. But which is the major hormone among T3 and T4?
T4.
T4. Then if it is the major hormone, why this is active? Because more than 99% of T4 is bound to proteins in the plasma. So they are not free. So what is free? Mostly T3.
T3.
And T4, if it enters into the cell, that it has to get converted into T3. Is it clear?
Yes,
So to
sir.
convert T4 into T3, you have to remove one iodine. And this T4 stock, which is moving around in the blood, is like that stock. So if you have less T3, your T4 will start becoming free from the proteins. Is it clear, everyone? And you can free it and use it.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Okay, cool. Okay, so what do thyroid hormones do? So write down their function. So this was their mechanism, and it is asked. So write down about their function. Thyroid hormone, the first major function is it regulates the BMR. You know BMR? Anyone knows BMR? Regulates the BMR, basal metabolic rate of the body. Is it clear? The overall
Yes.
metabolism. Remember, I told you about metabolism in the first chapter itself. What is metabolism? It's a characteristic defining property of life. It's the sum total of all the chemical reactions that happening
Happen
inside.
in the body.
So everyone has a different basal metabolic rate. You will find some people, they are very active. They are so active and during the childhood that whatever amount of food they eat, they also feel hungry. They are eating good food, but they always are lean because they are very active. They're always running here and there, right? And sometimes people struggle to lose weight, but they cannot do it because if their BMR is already low, they will not be able to utilize a lot of fats. Even if they start running, they will just get tired. Do you understand? So basal metabolic rate has a lot of work to do in the body. It also helps with fighting the diseases. Some people, for the same disease, you take same age group of people with no disease in their body, and then they get some disease, the recovery time for both will be different, right?
Yes, sir.
That also depends on your basal metabolic rate, or how well you are how well any person is responding to drugs, because drugs or medicines, when they go inside our body, medicines are called drugs. Basically, in day-to-day language, we use drugs for the narcotics drug, but medicinal drugs, whenever I use the word drug, it's for the medicine. Voila. So whenever any drug goes into the body, it has to be metabolized by the liver, right?
Yes, sir.
Get absorbed and metabolized by the liver and sent to organs where it is required to do its function. So that also depends on the basal metabolic rate. If someone has a low metabolic rate, the same medicine will take more time to heal that person. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
This whole BMR is regulated by thyroid hormones. So this is the first role of thyroid hormones. And write down, it increases. So thyroid hormone basically increases the BMR in most of the tissues. In most of the tissues. Why we say most? Because there are some places where thyroid hormones do not increase the BMR. In most of the tissues, and just write about them also, except in most of the tissues except your brain, testes in males, they do not increase BMR in testes in male. And there's one thing called spleen. You know spleen, where these RBCs go and die, the graveyard of RBCs.
No, sir.
Okay, I'll teach about that. So just write brain, testes, and spleen. So these are the exceptions where thyroid hormone does not increase the BMR. Otherwise, it increases the BMR in other tissues. Okay, and so what happens as BMR gets increased? As BMR increases, you will start generating more and more energy, right?
Yes, sir.
More and more ATPs, more and more heat. So the body will heat up. Is it clear?
Yes,
And the
sir.
body temperature rises. So have you ever seen during the winter, especially when we eat food, So when we are eating it, during that process, we feel like whatever is the temperature outside, we feel that. But just after eating for some time, for a few minutes, you feel cold, right? Has it happened with you? And then after, let's say 15, 20, half an hour, 1 hour, you start feeling warm again. Has anyone felt that or observed that? So just after eating the food, lots and lots of our energy is diverted to digestive system. You know, they start producing and secreting lots of enzymes, and all that requires lots of energy, right? So we
Yes,
first feel deprived of energy. You know, that's why it said that if you find a shivering person in hypothermia, do not feed the person even hot things. Don't feed the person anything, because feeding will again activate digestive system, and lots of energy will get utilized in digestion only. So you will feel cold or you will feel sleepy, not active. But after some time, it will start producing energy as a result of all nutrients and metabolic activities inside the cell, like respiration. You start producing ATPs more. Is it clear?
yes, sir.
That effect where our body temperature rises because of calories intake is called calorigenic effect. So just write it down here. The phenomena where metabolic rate increases, cellular metabolism of carbohydrates, lipids, and fats increases, and as a result, body produces more heat or ATPs, and as a result, body produces more heat or ATPs, is called calorigenic effect. Calorigenic effect. Okay, this is a question. Is it clear till here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let's just end this. Just give me 1 or 2 more minutes. I'll just end. So this was about T3 and T4, and now about calcitonin. Just write down just one function. Only this function will be asked if ever it comes into the exam. Write down calcitonin is produced by the thyroid gland in response to high calcium levels in the blood. In response to high calcium levels in the blood. Okay. It decreases, just write down, it decreases the plasma calcium concentration. So whenever it is high, it decreases the plasma calcium concentration. So when it decrease, how will it decrease the plasma concentration? Where is the calcium coming in the blood from? Where is calcium in our body mostly? What in our body is made up of calcium?
Teeth.
And just your teeth are calcium, that's all. Bones, what are your bones made up of?
Calcium.
Exactly. Calcium Sandoz tablets for healthier bones, calcium in the Horlicks for healthier bones. All these advertisements you don't see on television. So bones, whenever there is excess in calcium in the body, bones dissipate calcium out and put it into the blood. And when blood plasma calcium level increases, this calcitonin is secreted from thyroid and brings that level down by decreasing that mobilization from bones. So calcium stays in the bones because of calcitonin. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
If we do not have calcitonin, then we can start losing calcium from the bones. Is it clear? And all
Yes.
that can come into the blood. So that's all. That's always, this is the one that's asked. Okay. Okay, so let's just stop at here and we'll finish rest of the glands in the next class. Okay. Any doubts? Anyone?
No, sir.
Okay, then bye-bye. And ask your friends who are joining classes to join the classes. Once endocrine ends, I will come with the spermatogenesis and cell cycle. So don't miss that. Otherwise, it's very difficult to catch up later. Okay.